Good evening. I got to tell you, it's great to be out of the holidays for one reason. The potlucks and all of these events were killing me. Oh my gosh. So anyway, John Brooks, running for governor. Wanted to give you a quick rundown on myself. This is a 20-minute presentation. I've got 10, so I'm going to breeze through some things here, but I am absolutely here and available to talk through any of these issues as we go forward. First of all, I moved to Colorado when I was 7 years old. In the last course of my history, I've spent several decades running operations in the state as both a chief of emergency services. I was a paramedic firefighter, and I was also chief of emergency services as that paramedic and firefighter, and also a member of the Air Force Reserves. And for the last 25 years, I've been an executive in the data telecom space. So why am I running? Well, I believe the state needs fresh visions, fresh views, fresh faces, fresh approaches to be able to tackle some of these issues that we have going on with our state. Now, again, I've never been elected to government before. I've been elected to my HOA. I don't think that counts. It was a strong victory of what I've been told, but okay. But I do bring executive experience from both public and private. On the public side, I ran emergency services as an enterprise, although it was losing money, so it was a burden to the taxpayers. When I was appointed as chief, my job was to take that role and bring it back to a profitable enterprise, which is what I did. So my experience in the public domain, working under Tabor as a county director, I actually took that enterprise off the back of the taxpayers and made it completely self-funded while expanding services across the entire Rocky Mountain sections of Colorado, so half the state. We actually increased our service footprint, zero tax base to make that happen. So after that, I've spent the last 25 years working in private industry, running large-scale programs around the world. So my passport right now is 85 countries. I've run over 300 projects in those countries for both public and private organizations. Those projects have been worth over hundreds of millions of dollars worth of programs that I've actually run across most of the continents. I didn't make it to Antarctica, although I heard I was called there, but I never made it down. But that kind of intensity and that kind of program experience and that kind of enterprise government experience is what we're lacking right now in the state. Right now in the state, we are operating very much as I've got my state job and I'm secure. No, you're not. In state government, we need to run efficiently, we need to run quickly, we need to run effectively for the patients, or for the, I'm an old paramedic, so I say patients a lot, for the residents and visitors in Colorado. Everybody's going to pass out here in a minute, and I'll get to that. But over the years, as I've watched our roads get worse, our affordability slip away, I've watched our education continue to decline. We're ranked 35th in K through 12 right now, performance around the nation. And I come from the perspective of saying education is crucial from an international competitive perspective. Take the emotion out of it. If our kids aren't internationally prepared to compete, guess what? International's coming here. I know because several hundred of them used to work for me. So I have that experience. I understand that's happening. So what differentiates me? Why me? I'm focused on Colorado issues, urgent issues, that when resolved are going to decrease cost and increase prosperity. That includes lowering healthcare costs, lowering energy costs, et cetera. But here's the interesting part about my candidacy. I'm going to say two sentences to you. Put together, they'll make you pass out, probably. That's usually what happens. That's why I'm a paramedic. I'm a Republican. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. I love doing that. I survived. It's proof that it happens. But what that means is I understand the lens through which Democrats and independents view the same issues that we view in our state. Not only that, those people are half the group that asked me to get involved. Those people are working on my campaign. Our next town hall is in Boulder for independents and Democrats, first week of February. That's the differentiator, is that those people are people I grew up with for the last 50 plus years. They understand that I look at all sides of an issue before rendering a decision on those issues, and I include all voices to get there. But the good news is, as governor, I own the goalpost. So when I say education goes to number one, guess what? That's the goalpost. I don't care who gets us there, that's the goalpost. We picked the right people to solve Colorado issues. As governor, I'm going to put in what's called a contract with Coloradans. There's 14 points of that contract. It's on the card in the back there. I won't go into too much detail on it, but understand that all of those issues are energy, transportation, healthcare, immigration, all of these areas, including affordability, that are very, very key to some of our health within the state. So let's talk about two of them real briefly here. And again, I'm here afterwards. I'm here to talk to you for as many of these issues as you like. We also have a program called Brooks and Reach, where you can actually call my phone and actually ask me anything you like. And if you get my voicemail, it means I'm talking to somebody else. Leave me a voicemail. I will call you back and we will talk about those issues. But let's talk quickly about fiscal health. And is my little clicker working back there? Rob? Okay. Well, boy, that's going to be easy to read. All right. Well, let's just go through this real briefly and talk about what we're going to be doing here. First of all, we need to understand that HHS and HUD just went through and did some reporting on Colorado and investigating and found out that we have been misusing money, giving money to organizations for people that are deceased. We've got a lot of fraud. Who knew? Yes. Well, along with all of these areas, we're on the hook for potentially paying that back to the federal government. One of the things that I'm going to do along those realms is I'm going to go through and say, all right, that was my background. When I ran those programs around the world, I worked in fiscal responsibility for cost, revenue, and fraud around the world. I wrote the fraud standards for the Telemanagement Forum out in Europe that apply to the entire world in some of those sectors. The budgets I worked with were 3 times budgets for the state of Colorado. And I recovered billions of dollars and gave instant visibility. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to digitize the state budget. Not rocket science. I'm amazed it hasn't been done yet. You will be able to go to one place and see every bit of money coming into the state and where it goes in real time. There is no reason that can't be done. But we're going to look at a lot of different things in that. We're going to look at Tabor that's constantly being attacked. I have a formula and a plan to fix it so that it will be virtually untouchable. Tabor's crucial. But Tabor doesn't respond very well. When I go through and have a plan to lower healthcare costs, Tabor doesn't understand that. It goes up and gives you more money. That's not how it's supposed to work. I have a plan to fix that and correct that and make Tabor very responsive, and we will keep it intact. See if the clicker still works. Nobody can read those. Unfortunate, because those are some of the companies around the world that I have run programs for. There are several of the companies there that some of the senior executives are still personal friends of mine to this day. They will actually come with me to my administration to help run these programs on a contract basis. They don't even need to be state employees. But they will run these programs to bring fiscal responsibility back into Colorado state government, once and for all. When we look at the fact that some of the challenges that we have out there, including that $2 billion shortfall that's associated with revenue and structural costs, we can track every bit of that, put it up online, let every Coloradoan have visibility into it, because frankly, freedom is also dictated by how much money you keep in your pocket. The state's seeing to it that you can keep as little as possible. We're going to fix that. Now, we're going to reimagine revenue models, especially for transportation. We're going to look at K through 12 programs that have increased cost dramatically, but don't support core curriculum. If we don't support core curriculum, what are we doing? So all of that extra fluff in education needs to go away. We need to look at the fact that CU now has tuition costs that were $3,300. Now they're $15,000. That's been since 2002 up to now. I graduated from CU. And I also graduated from Fairview High. So we never played Pomona, Barb, but I'm from Fairview. We would have won, but that's another story. #1 in the state. We actually took state championships while I was there. It was always us and Cherry Creek, always. But anyway, we'll talk about some of those things in more detail, but we also, one of the other things I wanted to touch on briefly was talking about affordability and the cost of living. Colorado, as Barb mentioned, is ranked 43rd in the state, and or in the nation, and I've seen numbers actually higher than that for affordability. We have affordable housing, supposedly, and we have opportunity zones and economic zones. None of those are working. We need to be thinking and changing the conversation to talk about affordable communities. We need to look at mountain programs that are going to protect mountain communities, revitalize programs and mountain industries. And by the way, that's what that looks like. And I think you might have seen in some of the emails coming out advertising this. I've got an entire blog put up on what that looks like on the intersection between affordability, industry, and investment. And that's what I do. From an enterprise perspective, I go around the world raising money. I work with the Smart Cities Council and other places around the world. I'm their global thought leader for regional and rural community revitalization. That's what I do. We bring in investment, not just in industry, but we bring in investment in communities and housing and infrastructure. Those are the things that Colorado needs so that communities like Evergreen, like Conifer, like Dillon don't have one leg in their economic stool that makes them vulnerable. We need to expand that footprint, okay? So again, I've got a lot more to talk about there. I'm not going to spend too much more time on it, but one thing I do want to touch on real quick is that we need to think big and we need to innovate. And then Rich is going to take the microphone away from me. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is by finally putting in something we've been talking about since I was a little boy, and that's a mountain transit system. I-70 is a mess and it's getting worse. We need to rethink and reimagine a mountain transit system. I've got a plan for that. I've already started talking to potential investors about that. We need to revitalize our access to our mountain communities for the workers and also for the industries and for the visitors. I have a plan for that. That's not it anymore. That's me. But thank you very much. And by the way, Brooks, tell my website real quick. My website is Brooks, the number 4, COGUV, Brooks4ColoradoGov.com. I've got some cards back there in the back with on it. Thank you very much for all your time.
All right. So actually, people in Boulder that live there play football. I thought they brought all those football players in from somewhere else. I thought they were the badminton champions. I didn't know. All right, not that I'm against Boulder, but you can't even smoke a cigar there without going to prison. They got more fire calls for putting out cigarettes in Boulder than they do houses. All right, ladies and gentlemen, next up is Robert Moore, and we're very happy to have Bob here. And Bob, thank you for coming, and please tell us about yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks so much. And thanks for being here. Really great to see all of you. I'm Robert Moore. Some of my friends like Rich call me Bob, and that's okay either way. But I'm really happy to see all of you and tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Colorado, Lakewood, went to Alameda High School, went off to the military academy at West Point, got my degree in physics, and off into the Army I went, and did a career in the military, ended up retiring as a lieutenant colonel in the Army Special Operations Command out of Fort Bragg, and spent a combat tour in Iraq and a combat tour in Afghanistan. So there are some differences between, thank you, I appreciate that. There are some differences between the candidates, and I'm pretty sure though of the 450 that are running, see, I got into the race because I didn't think we had nearly enough candidates running for governor. But of all the candidates, I can pretty well guarantee you I'm the only one that's led troops in combat in both Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, yeah, thank you. I've been in positions, I've stood in places where failure was not an option, where lives were on the line. Colorado is a little bit like that. I will say there was one advantage to being over in combat, and that was at least I knew where the bullets were coming from. In politics, maybe not so much, but I am happy to be one of the candidates with some great other candidates, Senator Kirkmeyer and John Brooks here. All of us want to do the right thing for Colorado. We all want to change, and you do too, and I think most of Colorado does. In my private sector life, because I did spend some time in the reserves, and I went to work for a startup company, Compaq Computer Corporation. You may have remembered that, Compaq. Our claim to fame was we made the first portable computer. You remember? Portable. It was the size of a sewing machine. I mean, you could barely lug it around, but it got us started on the right track, and then Hewlett-Packard bought us for some $25 billion, something like that. So it was a good sale, and I became an executive there at HP. So I've got that business experience. Most recently, I'm at Supermicro and NVIDIA, working out there in Silicon Valley. So in the IT industry, that's been my background. But I think you really need that kind of background in business. Helps to balance the budget for our state. because it seems like, the Democrats just like to spend like drunken sailors, right? They do. Although I say that, but then as an Army guy, I have to apologize because to the sailors, that's not fair to them. The Democrats, that's really offensive for those poor sailors. But it's important to have that kind of military leadership, I think, as well as a business background, because I think there are some candidates in the race that probably couldn't balance a budget if their life depended on it, and maybe would not know a spreadsheet if it fell on their face. So I think we've all got to decide collectively as Republicans who we want to take on that mantle and put on the ballot that can actually win a general election against one of those Democrats. Now, I know we can do it. This is our time. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We really can make this happen. But we got to get together, we got to unite, and we got to do it now. And I know it's possible. Do you know how I know it's possible? A couple of reasons. One, I look in your eyes, I see the fight. I know you're ready to fight. You're tired of what our state has been going through. You're tired of these crazy bills, transgender bills, and all sorts of stuff that's coming out of the General Assembly. All we need is a great Republican governor to veto those bills, and that'll shut all that craziness down. And that's what I would do first time I get into that office. You've got to have a good, solid, strong governor. Veto. One of the candidates told me, well, you can't do that because the state assembly will override the vetoes. Well, no, not really. They've got to have 2/3 vote to do that, and they won't have that, I don't think, in the next election. We have to be a little careful. Let's not get too hubris and overconfident, because it's going to be a tough fight, and we may not get the entire House and entire Senate, but as long as we don't have a super minority, we can veto those bills and cut out all of this craziness. So that's the first reason I know it's possible. I see it, I know. You're here tonight on your own time. We're here spending our own time, money, energy, and effort because we want to change this state and bring some common sense back here. And the second reason I know we can do it is we got some good local leaders. Tom Tancredo's right over there. He has served our state honorably, and yet there he is right here with us, making sure we can take the state back. And thank you, Tom, for being here. And the other example is good local leadership. Rich is a good one here. Let me tell you, he is very persuasive. I got to tell this story real quick. He is a good negotiator. I am an Army Special Forces officer. I can shoot pretty well. I went to a Lincoln Day dinner where Rich was auctioning off some things. He sold me shooting lessons, and I bought them for $2,000. I got probably 6 days worth of shooting lessons that I could give myself. Rich sold them to me, and he didn't stop there. No, he didn't stop there. Every time that we had my campaign manager, Marla, Linda, they were there at that. We had to have dueling paddles so that we could keep up with the bids that Rich was throwing our direction. In fact, I spent so much money that night that the chairman of the Arapahoe County chairman, John, called me up and said, "Hey, don't send us that check yet. We're not sure how to accept that because it's too much money. We don't want to get you in trouble." And I said, "Yeah, it'd be tough for me to campaign for governor wearing an orange jumpsuit down at the county lockup." Yeah, so anyway, they figured out how to do it, and I gave them a lot of money for a whole lot of things that I probably don't need, but I was happy to do that. In fact, I'm going to call myself the Lincoln Day Dinner Crasher. That's what I'm going to do, Rich, from now on. We've got to change a lot of things about this state, and I want to do that, and I can do that, and I have a plan to do that. And you deserve that. You deserve to hear that from your candidates, not just what they want to change, but how specifically they can do it. On my poster over there, I've got some things. We got to lower crime, for sure. We can't have them rob the pizza shop up here that Rich owns. We got to make sure that we reduce taxes. Taxes, property taxes, I don't know about yours, but mine double or triple in the last 5-7 years. Our state spending has gone up under Jared Polis by 50%. Our population's gone up 1 or 2%. It's not sustainable. They spend every dime that they can possibly get, and then they disguise it as fees. We've got to stop that. We got to lower the cost of living, and we can do that too. And we have to lower the cost of good, new, quality homes. And I'm not talking about doing a lot of government, affordable, project-type homes, but we can do things to lower the cost of housing, good quality housing. Do you know, because I've been talking a lot with the builders and developers, and do you know that For example, to get a new home permit in the city of Denver, or Boulder's probably even worse, but in the city of Denver, it takes 10 months for a new housing permit. I know the mayor down there, John Whitmire, down there in Houston, and he just lowered the permitting process to 30 days. 30 days in the 4th largest city in the country versus Denver, Colorado, which is 10 months. Now that's the difference between having a housing availability and a housing shortage is what we have. And I've talked to some of Linda's friends that are developers here, and they tell me about the permitting process and fees that are just choking our builders and developers to death. To tap in for a small development for homes into a typical city water line, it's $600,000. In Houston, down there in Texas, it's like $10,000. For a housing development, this one developer I've talked to personally told me that for a unit that he's building, it's a big one, it's 5,000 units, and it's going to cost him over $100 million just to start the permitting process, and over 5 years and before he can actually put a shovel in the ground. So why have we gotten that far? Because the Democrats have led us down the path of overregulation, increased costs, and increased burdensome taxes, and it's choking us, it's choking our businesses. And I believe, my opinion is, the business of Colorado is business, and we've got to stimulate the economy by enabling those businesses and making sure we cut all those onerous regulations down. Now, we got a lot of good candidates, and I hope that you'll look at each of us closely. My website is coloradodeservesmore.com, because I really do think Colorado deserves more, and I think that's pretty catchy too, if I don't mind saying so myself. And I will tell you, I'll leave you with this. When Donald Trump got shot, what did he say? Fight, fight, fight. And that's what we're going to do, and we're going to win in November, get a candidate that can do it for the Republican Party as governor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Great job. Okay, if I could stay up here, Bob. Robert, stay up here. Sorry, Robert. All right, come on up here, Barb and John. John, where are you at? Come on up here. Okay, guys, we're going to take some questions now, and I'll give you guys the mics. We've only got 2, so you guys got to share the 2 of them. Okay?
We'll share.
And Joan's going to come around with the microphone, and if you bother her, I'm going to be very nice to you. And that'll be painful in itself. Okay, so let's start right here.
It's for all 3 of you.
Hold on, wait till she gets
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
mic. Here, John.
This is for all 3 of you. Will you support ICE?
I can go first. Absolutely. That's my answer. Absolutely. I would.
Not only will I support ICE, I'm going to work very hard with every single jurisdiction to make sure they also do.
Yeah, I think we've got to support the federal authorities. We've got to support ICE. And I think the problem is, if we do that, and if we have some local police participate in supporting ICE, it's really better that way, because you don't end up with this Renee Good situation that we just had up there in Minneapolis. You saw that. Because if there would have been some local police there helping, the local police support and can protect not only the ICE officers, but also, the protesters, and keep them separated. That's why we got to work with them. But now that's been codified in law, so we're going to have to do some changes. But I will tell you, as governor, you got the power of pardon, and you might be able to use that if some of our police officers get crosswise for cooperating with ICE. But yes, cooperate with ICE for sure.
Okay, next one right here, Mary Lou.
With the recent planned power outages in Evergreen, and we were in an unplanned outage where we live 5 days with no reprieve, and then Fort Collins and Loveland along the Interstate 25 corridor, if you were governor, and this is for each of you, what would you do to bring the multi-state monopoly of Xcel under control, and what would you do to stop the planned weather-related power outages?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So really problematic, and we saw, my brother lives up there. He teaches at CU, and he suffered one of those power outages as well. And they just have this unilateral decision-making capability. And frankly, as I studied that particular situation, I don't think that outage was really needed, and they just do it out of an abundance of caution, is my own view. So I think we've got to put a little bit of pressure on that Public Utility Commission. I've seen other states that do something like this. They'll actually break up the Utility Commission, and so that might be a possibility as well. But certainly a lot more oversight, and this is craziness when you don't have enough power and electricity simply because they think there might be some chance of an issue.
I don't think we should just make a little change to the Public Utilities Commission. I think we need to replace all 3 members. And as governor, that's what I would do. Currently, you know, these boards and commissions are supposed to be equal in representation as far as you can't have more than 1 person from a major party on that board. So he appointed a Democrat from Boulder. He appointed an unaffiliate from Eagle County that might as well have been a Democrat. And then he appointed Tom Plant, who was a Boulder representative who turned his registration, gave up his registration as a Democrat to unaffiliate and put him on the PUC. So they're the ones who have control over what is happening with regard to Excel, Atmos, Tri-State, all of them. And they're the ones that do this. The other thing, not that I'm speaking on necessarily on behalf of Excel here, but our one-party control passed legislation in 2019 that required we get to carbon-free by 2050. And then they proceeded to pass another 75 bills over the course of the last, since 2021, so over the course of the last 5-6 years, that just added on more regulations, more costs. And then they keep giving, and there's a bill in place right now that's coming through that will give certain ratepayers free utilities. Let's be clear, there is nothing free when it comes from government. It's either your taxpayers are paying for it or the ratepayers are paying for it. So again, we've got to go in and change those regulations, claw back that rule, that regulation with regard to banning natural gas and getting to carbon free. And I've got a plan to do that, and we can fix it. So that's what I would do.
So real quick, that person from the PUC from Boulder, I think they graduated from Pomona, but I'm not
No,
entirely
no, they did not.
So,
Nice try,
you
nice
know, doing
try.
what I can here. I'm trying to hold my own here. Just real quickly, first of all, as far as those power outages go, the Marshall fire that took place, I was lieutenant in the fire service, so I spent a little over 10,000 911 calls before I went to administration in chief. That department is where I was a lieutenant. So that was my old department. Now, I can go on for days about the fact that a lot of these infrastructure pieces within the utilities are way outdated. What I always do as governor, because a lot of people don't know this, we have somewhere north of 250 power generation stations in this state of all sizes and shapes. Comanche 3 is part of the story, just a small part of the story. It's a bigger station. But we have a bunch of power stations around here, and we have a lot of above ground power that makes people get very upset and makes public service very upset. So they start cutting off power proactively, and it happened after the Marshall fire. I grew up in Boulder. The biggest winds we had there were 137 mile an hour. We didn't cut power. Somebody needs to, I'm not going to say the right words that I want to say here, but having to do with putting on their big boy and girl pants and stop doing that. So what do you do as governor? You get the PUC in there and you say, mandate getting the power lines buried and the infrastructure hardened so they never shut off the power again, period.
Thank you. Ramey Johnson here. If you were currently governor, would you please explain how you would handle the Tina Peters situation?
The fun question, of course. Now, Tina is a very serious case. And the very first thing I'm going to say is that we need to make sure that this current situation with the Court of Appeals plays through, because I think she's building up a lot of tailwind behind her. And I think that's going to be very good for her. So that needs to play through, and I think Jared Polis has an opportunity to do things here as well. What we also need to be looking at is if those don't happen in the next 12 months, which I believe something will happen, and as long as if something for some reason doesn't happen to where she's not out of prison within the next 12 months, day one, she's out of prison. As far as I'm concerned, we are doing at least clemency day one to be able to get her out of prison. Now, there's a great deal of other vehicles in which she can be released, including community corrections. community corrections is an option for her as well. There's plenty of different ways for her to get out. But in 12 months from now, when I would take office, we get her out right away. If I'm currently governor, how would I handle it? I would immediately move to clemency because I want these other pieces to play out. And that's very strategic in that view. So there's, like I said, a lot of different vehicles here, but if we go down the clemency road right away, that leaves us options to let these other ones play out, and then we can go down and visit the pardon as we get further down and see how those work out. If I'm governor today, and the Court of Appeals hasn't made their ruling yet, do I want to get out ahead of that? Because what we have to be very careful of is what do we do to weaponize the other side if we immediately go out and do something with that looks extreme in their eyes. One way or the other, the goal here is get her out of prison. Get her out immediately. That's my priority. But she's got several vehicles that are in play right now that we need to make sure those go through appropriately. Either way, she's out of prison right now if I'm governor right now. That's clemency, then she's out.
As governor, we have a responsibility to follow due process and be fair and consistent. Tina Peters is not the only one who would be asking for clemency or to commute her sentence or to get a pardon. And I think the governor needs to take all of those things into consideration. First thing is, the process is, and it's required, that the individual asking for clemency, so either to have their sentence commuted or be pardoned, has to fill out a form, and it has to go through a certain process. So I would make sure that that process has been followed. And then I would take everything into consideration. And I think the evidence that was presented at the appellate court is new evidence that should be taken under consideration, and it needs to be looked at. I would also take her age and, or whomever it was, age and health of the individual. I would take all of that into consideration as well. I would have to have a discussion with the district attorney in that case and other individuals to see, again, make sure that I am getting all the facts and following due process, and then I would go from there. I don't have all those facts right now, so I couldn't tell you exactly where I would be, but again, I would make sure that I am fair, consistent, I follow due process, look at all the evidence that is out there, and make sure, again, that we are reminding ourselves that we are the party of the rule of law, and that we have to be fair and consistent. Because somewhere down the track, if we just say, yep, you're gonna be out, then what are we gonna do when somebody else comes up that was, in a different situation and just, not follow due process? I think that's what needs to happen. So I would have to look at all of those things and make sure that I know what's going on.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the question. My answer might be a little shorter than everybody else's. Pardon? I just pardon her. I would. I'm sorry. And the reason is I've listened to a lot of the evidence and read the transcripts, and the judge at the sentencing, the trial judge that gave her the 9 years, added in a lot of her comments as a private citizen after she was no longer in office. And then the penalty was harsher because she kept bringing into question things about if the election of 2020 was legitimate. So she has the right to freedom of speech like everybody else does, like the rest of us. And she is a private citizen when she made those comments, and the judge used that as against her from what I heard and read in the transcript. And so I just start out with a pardon. Thanks for the question.
Hey, Rich, I'd like to make a statement.
Get out of here.
Rich is the best leader we ever had in Jefferson County, right?
Hey, all right. We think so too.
The question is for all of you, but Senator Kirkmeyer, she handles this. On the Tabor, my understanding from Independence Institute and everything, that if we got rid of all of the rebates that for solar panels and EV cars and if that wealthy people can, we'd get about $4,000 back each year for every person. And now this year they're saying we're not getting anything. Could you explain what's going on there?
Sure. So I serve on the Joint Budget Committee. Tabor is extremely important. I just want you all to know I led the No on HH campaign to make sure that we didn't dismantle and take away Tabor. And it's under constant attack by the Democrats and one-party control. In fact, the state senator who used to be the chair of the Joint Budget Committee last year, and he's still on the Joint Budget Committee, and he's running for treasurer. His name is Jeff Bridges. Don't vote for him. He's a Democrat. But you need to know this. He used to make these comments last year that Tabor is the reason that government can't have nice things. And I would immediately raise my hand at the JBC and say, no, no, no. Tabor is why the people get to have nice things. So we need to ensure that we protect Tabor. I don't know if the $4,000 figure is the exact. I mean, if that came from Ben at Independence Institute, I'm going to go with it on it, but I don't know for exactly what it is. But what has happened in this state is we have created a lot of workarounds to get around Tabor, to increase your taxes. So every time you hear a Democrat say they need to increase revenues, they're saying they want to increase your taxes. Every time you hear them say they want to create an enterprise, but I will tell you, Tabor does allow for the creation of enterprises. Those are essentially off budget. It's like I don't get to appropriate funds from there. I don't get to have any say over what's within that budget. So for example, higher education is an enterprise. And it's offline, but essentially it cuts, it pulls money out from underneath the cap, and it ends up increasing your taxes because there's more money to be spent in other areas then. So you have to be careful of that. And then with regard to the tax credits, we have about $2.3 billion worth of tax credits in this state. And I will tell you, as Republicans, we vote for some of those, because at least somebody's getting a tax break someplace. But there are a bunch of them, like you were talking about, for EV bikes and EV vehicles and those types of things. And I don't even know what's in all of them. I mean, there's stuff about homelessness. There's tax credits for all sorts of things. We need to be putting in a measure that, first of all, that says if we don't have a Tabor surplus, we shouldn't be giving a tax credit. The other thing is we need to examine all of those tax credits and whether or not they should all still be in place. And there are quite a few of them, I think, that probably need to go away. I tried carrying bills during the special session to eliminate tax credits, the one specifically on EV bikes and EV cars and EV lawnmowers. Was not successful in getting rid of those, but those are infringing again, and they just keep increasing taxes. The other thing I just want to tell you real quickly is this progressive tax that they're trying to get onto the ballot is a dismantling of Tabor. No matter what those folks from Bell Policy say, those Democrats say, and it's Chris DeGrew Kennedy, he's from Jefferson County, right?
Not anymore.
He doesn't live in Jefferson County anymore? Not tomorrow. Okay, great. I mean, he runs that now. He's the guy who keeps saying, oh, no, we're not increasing your taxes. Anytime we dismantle Tabor and we increase the Tabor cap, we are increasing your taxes. And that senator that I told you about, Jeff Bridges, who's running for state treasurer, he is the one who is supposedly carrying a bill, a referred measure, to increase the Tabor cap by billions of dollars. That will increase your taxes and my taxes as well. So we need to fight against it. And it's a referred measure, so it doesn't take, 2/3 of the General Assembly. It's a simple majority. They will get it on the ballot. And we're in for another fight this year, folks. Gonna need your help. Thank you for the question.
Just for Mark? No, everybody?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just add to that. And kudos to Senator Kirkmeyer for fighting the Democrats on the budget, because that's a really tough battle. If we're going to reduce taxes, like I think I certainly want to do, we've got to have a way to do that, reducing costs. We were talking a little earlier about how you might be able to do that, and you've got to cut expenses and cut spending. Colorado has over 200 separate offices with employing over 6,000 state employees there at a average of maybe a six-figure salary. That's $600 million. There's plenty of areas that we can cut back, and some of the nonprofits, like we were talking about earlier, that supposedly get their funds, actually get a lot of their money from taxes, and then the Democrats disguise taxes as fees, so we're up against multiple of those things. We got to straighten all that out, but we can certainly streamline several offices. Like Dora, I think, could be streamlined. You have the Office of Government Outreach to the community, and some of those can really seriously be looked at to reduce a lot of expenses. That helps bring the taxes down.
So, as I mentioned before, I actually ran a government organization here in Colorado that worked under Tabor, and we were held to Tabor limitations until I was able to break it completely free from any tax obligation. And then the county commissioners were very happy because they got to keep all of that money and put that money where it belonged, back with services for the taxpayers. So one of the things that we need to do within the state is visit different revenue models and rethink some of our revenue models and move to some self-sustaining models, not everywhere in the state, but there's certainly many places in the state that can do that. Department of Transportation is a great point. That's a good place to start for getting to more sustainability. You know, I don't know how many of you drive the variable tolls down here on I-25 and I-70 and 470. I drive those a lot, and what I see is the toll lanes are empty. So what's happening right now? Well, the Department of Transportation's not meeting their goals and their projections for those revenue numbers off of those areas because those variable tolls are ridiculous. And as a result, they're stealing money from other parts of their budget very quietly to meet their bond obligations. Anybody knew about that? Nobody knew about that. Those are the kind of things they don't tell you. When they cut programs, they cut the high emotion programs when they're not making their budget. So they cut education and healthcare and things like that all get us riled up. Look what the timing was. In this last election, what happened? We passed all of the lunch and school programs, and we passed all of the Tabor carve-outs for all of it. That's what they do. They get you all revved up about, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, and here's why. And then they do that, and they put it through on an election, and we pass it. That becomes a problem. So we need to look at all of these areas. That's why I want to digitize the state budget, so you can see where all of this money is going minute by minute across the state, so that we can see exactly how that money is being spent or not spent or inappropriately spent, which is happening a lot.
Hello, my name is Will Carr. I'm here with my 9-year-old daughter. Yeah, thank you. Doesn't she look amazing? Anyway, I have 2 questions. I was going to ask one question specifically, but now that John has brought this up twice, as a 35-year-old, I'm going to tell you something that the young vote really cares about, and something that you've said that I'm interested to understand a little more. Obviously, when you talk about bringing our spending and make it digital, I think what you're saying is you're going to bring everything on chain through blockchain. Am I correct in that assumption?
Blockchain is one avenue. And when we start talking about some other digital technologies out there, because I worked in a lot of that space for a while around digital identity, digital fraud, data management, master data management, and so on. So that is actually one avenue of about 5 avenues to make sure our data stays secure, our data stays comprehensive, and our data stays protected and managed by us.
Yes.
And not by the government. So yes.
Yeah, because I think we could probably have a more technical conversation about what that means, but why even stop there? Why would we not bring our entire economy on chain so we can actually bring back sound money principles and really drive our economy in a way where we don't have to tax people more? Because I think one thing when we talk about Tabor, everyone needs to understand that's the taxpayer bill of rights. You know, and taxpayers have rights. You know, almost saying Tabor is a way for us to forget that that's even something that we have as taxpayers. So
think about for just a moment about, let's talk about some of the fraud in the state right now. As soon as you go to immutable records and as soon as you go to distributed ledgers, which are blockchains, and that's all technical jargon, and everybody's like, oh my God, I don't want to, what are you talking about? I get it. But basically that means that we can keep protected records all the way across the board of anything in the state. If you die and one organization in government knows about it, blockchain and other technologies that we would bring to bear would make that instantly known across the entire state and all municipalities. And we stop spending money on you. Well, that would be phase 2. We want to make sure that all those ballots that showed up at Rich's house, all those extra ballots that went to Rich's house actually went to a dead person. We're gonna reroute them.
I just want to make a clarification with regard for transportation funding. We actually are covering our bonds, and we do spend some funds out of the general fund with regard to cover the bonds. But basically, the money for transportation funding in this state comes from the highway users tax fee, which is that fee that you pay at the pump. And it goes to the federal government, some of it, and some of it comes to the state. And that's where we get our money to fund transportation in this state. The tolls do not, you're right, John, you are right. The tolls do not provide enough to even maintain the roadways that they are tolling. But it is an additional tax and it is an additional fee that we're paying, but it's supposed to be used to maintain those sections of roadway. So, you know, it's not that we can we're not cutting education funding in the budget to fund transportation projects, or we're not cutting transportation to fund education. That simply is not what's happening. There are only certain things that we fund out of the general fund. We do fund education out of the general fund. And folks, we have a constitutional requirement, in fact, a couple of them with regard to education, that we do have to fund a free public school, a fair and uniform public school system throughout the state of Colorado. And then we passed another constitutional amendment that says we have to increase the funding for it from year to year by inflation. And that's when I talk about that we are funding as required under the Constitution. That is what I'm talking about, just as an FYI. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I won't belabor it anymore. I think that's been explained here. But I'm in favor of the blockchain because, that distributes that information around. It's much more secure that way, a lot more transparency, and it keeps it secure because you've got that information distributed, separate pieces in different location. That's kind of what this blockchain. Think of a chain with blocks in it, and you got your data in these different pieces, but not all in one. So if you get a hacker in, they don't get all your information. We can have a more technical conversation later. But yeah, I'm in favor of that. You could probably move everything that direction. I would say let's take it little by little.
I also just wanted to ask, so I have a 9-year-old daughter, I homeschool her. What would be, because the school system has just gotten, I'll leave it there. I homeschool her for a reason. Please tell me why or how you would improve the public school system and make it something that someone like myself would actually feel comfortable using again. I have an answer I'd like to hear, but I'll let you guys.
Well, we all have answers.
Okay, well, what is your answer you'd like us to hear? You'd like for everyone to hear?
Nice try, Barb. Take that mic from Will.
Are you gonna go? Do you want to go first? Or?
You go ahead.
So again, the question was, what would we do to improve the education system in our state? First of all, I think we need to get to a situation where parents have the opportunity to choose where their child goes. Right? That's the most important thing. I will tell you, again, I grew up in Jefferson County, grew up in the Jefferson County public school system. After my brother got kicked out of Catholic school, we ended up all here, just so you know. But, and I will tell you, last year, when House Bill 1312 was out there, and House Bill 1312 is the misnaming, misgendering, dead naming, for children, and basically that schools, education systems, don't even need to let parents know what's going on with their child in the school, that they could just go change their name. And then if the parent didn't call them by that new name that they picked, and I used my grandson as an example because he's 10 years old and he would do stuff like this. He would change his name from Caden to maybe like Dirt Clod one week, and the next week, maybe it's something else, who knows, and his parents wouldn't know. If the parent doesn't call their child by that name, they could lose parental rights. That bill passed. It got amended on the Senate floor, and it passed. Exactly, because we're in the minority. Back to what Rich said from the very beginning, we have got to fight. Please run against Tammy's story. Please run against Tammy's story. But we've got to fight, and we've got to get out of this minority that we are in, where they control the House, they control the Senate, and they control the governor's office. We've got to have a backstop someplace. Anyways, that bill is coming back, and it's worse, and they're making it worse. So that bill's coming back. So first thing is school choice. Second thing is I'm actually carrying the School Finance Act this year with a Democrat, trying to make some changes there. We have got to get where we are holding these school districts accountable for their curriculum and the content in their curriculum, so that individuals, so that children are learning how to read and learning how to do math at the appropriate grade levels. So I think even though school districts are a local control issue, I think there is times where we need to step up, but I'm very concerned about the Democrats are in control. I'm very concerned about the content of the curriculum, but we do need to make changes in that content of curriculum. I think if you go look at charter schools, and even our homeschool parents are doing a phenomenal job in making sure that their children are doing very well in the assessments and that they can read and they can do math. But I think we need to look at some of our charter schools and what they're doing. I mean, the charter school up in Fort Collins that is run by former Congressman Bob Schaefer doing an incredible job, and they've really looked at how their content is and how they've changed it to make sure that children are really, getting that opportunity of an education. So I think those are things we need to look at.
Okay, so a couple things I would say on education. First of all, number one, I think to Barb's point, you have full control and choice over what happens with your child. But I go a step further and also say I think your money needs to follow your child as well. So, yeah, absolutely. The money needs to be able to follow. So, and I think we're probably all in agreement with that. Now, that said, I mentioned earlier about the international competitive part. When I worked overseas, I'm looking at kids that the people that work for me, their kids were running 5 to 7 day work a week ethics on academics. And they're doing that for one reason. Guess how many people in the history of the world have ever immigrated to India? 0. I think in the history of the world, they don't do it. But all those people, I had several hundred people working for me over in Bangalore. Their kids and their families, what did they want to do? They wanted to come here. I can't fault them for that. If you've been to India, you'll know why. But the point is, I think our kids should be the ones that have first shot at those jobs. Now, when they're showing up here, they're in medicine, they're in technology. I walk down the halls of Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, all of these different corporations in their IT shops. Those are $100,000 to $400,000 a year jobs. Guess what? You never see somebody that's a first generation or second generation or third generation American that's black, Hispanic, or Caucasian. You don't see that in those halls. Verizon wiped out their entire IT staff, brought in Infosys, a 100,000 person body shop out of India to run their IT. Why aren't our kids getting that first choice? The reason they're not getting it is because they're not educated to compete. So when I take emotion out of the conversation and I don't worry about all the things that have got us riled up in this room, and I agree with every one of them, but when I take emotion out of the conversation, my answer is we need to be internationally competitive, which means we focus on core curriculum, physical education, and the arts. We get back to the basics. We look at things like the junior high school models that have been ripped away, and we've gone to a middle school model. My wife was a school resource officer in the police department down in Golden. When Columbine went down, I was the paramedic chief of a private service up in Boulder at the time. I sent 2 of my rescues there. I sat in that dispatch center and listened to gunfire through their radios. I mean, it was a tough situation. And that was just the tip of the iceberg in school shootings. Our schools need to be safe. Our schools need to be preparing our kids appropriately. Our kids need to be held accountable. If you don't do the work, you don't move on. That's where we need to be getting back to. So all of that said, and I'm over speaking my time again, but understand where I'm going with this. We need to be able to drive those issues to be able to get our schools back to preparing our kids appropriately.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll just add briefly to that because we got some more questions over here, but I don't want to be too quick to be disparaging of the public school systems. I am a product of the public school system. I think a lot of the teachers really enjoy teaching and they're concerned about the kids. I was able to get myself from public school into West Point and then got accepted into Yale for graduate school and then in the business. I got a master's in business from Michigan, all based on my public schooling. Now, that's been a while with Abraham Lincoln, and I went to school together. So it's been a long time ago. But I can tell you a lot of parental involvement. I think you got it there because obviously with homeschooling. So the more involved parents stay with that public education, I think the more it helps. And then I think I've seen other states go to a voucher system where your money can follow you and you can pick the school or the charter school that you want to send your kids to. So that might make the public schools more competitive. But let's not be too quick to, disparage the public schools. Teachers I know really are good at, and have the children's best interest at heart.
All for being here. I am extremely impressed with your qualifications, your perspective, your knowledge, and your vision for what needs to be done and how it needs to be done in a variety of areas. The basis of this question is that there are a number of almost uncountable candidates for the governorship. I think each of you, and I'm sure there are others, that have enormous talent that is desperately needed in this state. I would like to know from each of you individually, if a Republican governor is elected, would you accept a position in that administration where your talents and your knowledge and all of the things that I see and I like, and I think we all do, can be put to use? I consider it to be an invaluable resource not to be overlooked.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'll start. Thank you for that. I got into this race not because I personally wanted to be governor, because I wanted to help Colorado. So I guess for me, it doesn't matter. It does matter. I obviously wouldn't be running if I didn't think I was the best candidate, as everybody here does. However, I'm happy to help Colorado with the caveat that, I've got a fairly active private sector life. Fortunately, I think I'm too old to be recalled to active duty with the Army. At least I hope so. But I would definitely be involved to whatever degree I can be, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm currently a state senator. I would still be a state senator at that point. But if I was called upon like I was before, I've been an executive director of a department, worked in the Owens administration and served on his cabinet. So yes, I would be honored and privileged to serve my state in that capacity again. It might kind of depend on which department it is, because I don't think I'd be that great at the Department of Corrections. It wouldn't be something I'd want to be. But I would work with them on it and certainly support a Republican governor. Let's just all pray we get there, right? Thank you. Thank you for the question.
I think both of my colleagues would make excellent lieutenant governors. But that said, the answer is yes. I think it's yes across the board. I think that if you let's look at Washington, for instance. Marco Rubio, presidential candidate, now Secretary of State. Load your bench up with good talent. I think to your point, we've got an extremely strong and deep talent bench within the candidacies. Now, as usual, we have some folks that may or may not fit into that realm very, very well, but there's not very many. Most of us, we're a strong bench. There's an awful lot of talent here. So as governor, I think there's an awful lot of opportunity for any of us to be able to tap others, to be able to do things to bring about those changes. There are strengths that we all bring to the table. Let's leverage them, not put them on the shelf after one of us wins.
Okay, there is a bill coming up before the General Assembly on February the 3rd, and it's Bill SB 26-027. It's a Parent Equality and Child Empowerment Act. Give me your opinion on this bill, please.
I have not read that bill, because bills are just getting read across. Is it the one that is basically the repeat of House Bill 1312 from last year? Because I think they're starting one in the House and one in the Senate this time. Can you tell me who's on the bill? Oh, okay. I'm not sure exactly what's on that bill. If it's a Democrat-led bill, though, I'm telling you I'm voting no already. I don't need to read the bill to tell you that, but it sounds like very similar to
Basically, it's a bill about parents having problems with a divorce and division of children. And it's basically to take good parents and making them share their children with a parent that is not a good parent. That's what the bill's primarily about.
I'm going to say this. I'm just going to say thank you, but because they're not knowledgeable about it, it's not fair to put them on the spot and get them up to speed on a bill. They're running for office. Let's just let that one by.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's okay with me. But yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Mark.
There's an old adage that says the most important to keep the most important thing the most important thing. And I don't know about everybody else in this room, but I haven't had confidence in the election of this state in 25 or 30 years. I don't believe anybody or most people that are running this state that they were selected. They weren't elected. What will you do to give us in Colorado an ironclad, truthful election system that will go on into the future, voting for the people the choice of the people, not the choice of the bureaucrats and the cheaters. And if you do get into office, do to Grinwald what she did to Tina Peters.
Well, I'm one of the data guys up here, so what I can tell you is that part of that work that I will do to digitize the state government will also be to digitize every single resident and voter roll in the state. That's going to include digitizing their status. Are they a resident? Are they an alien? Are they a citizen? Are they registered to vote? Are they alive? All of those things are going to be out there, and we'll lock that down. Absolutely. Well, and that comes down to some legislative moves to be able to make that happen. But I don't disagree with the severity of people lying on those issues. But the thing is that if we have fraudulent elections, we eliminate that by making sure the rolls are clean and the rolls are scrubbed, and they're scrubbed 24/7. One of the issues we have with cleaning up rolls right now is what we do is we roll in a big bus of people to go through and do a lot of the manual work. And then next year, we roll another bus of people in, and they do all the manual work. After a little while, what they stop doing is all that manual work. What we're talking about from a digital transformation perspective with smart cities, which is where I've spent a great deal of my last 5 years, is that we digitize every single bit of this, and we lock it down in distributed ledgers to where that cannot be changed without it raising a flag and somebody put eyes on it literally within the next hour. So that locks that down and keeps that protected. Well, exactly, because the source data that they're working from is what's not contemporary and actually guaranteed. Because if what I can tell you, so when I did this, let's take Verizon for instance, I tied to 2,000 systems there. And every one of those systems did not agree on a subscriber, a service, a plan, a location, all of that stuff. We fixed every bit of that. Same thing needs to happen at the state. This is not rocket science. We've been doing this for 25 years, but the state hasn't at all. But when we start making any kind of moves with any person at all, that is instantly known by all of these systems. So it's not just what the assessor knows about you, or what the county clerk knows about you, or what the state knows about you. They all need to be synchronized, and we will mandate that synchronization.
So first of all, I'm just going to say the voters did vote in mail-in ballots. And that was, what, about 10, 12 years ago now? Somewhere in that case. So I'm a firm believer there are things I don't like that voters vote for, but I think you have to follow the will of the voter, and I don't think you can get into a situation where you don't follow the will of the voter just because we don't. But I'm just saying it was voted in several years ago, will of the voter. So as governor, first of all, governors don't get to write law. Governors are in the executive branch, not in the legislative branch. So first thing I would do is we have about 2/3 of our clerks are actually, county clerks, are Republican. And I know my clerk in Weld County, and she's damn good. And so I'm going to call those clerks in and talk to them about what kind of system do we need. Probably hire John here to help with some of that. So anyways, I'm going to call those Republican clerks in and talk to them about what changes need to be made. I think John's correct, and I think you all know this. We need to purge those documents. I'm out walking, doing a bunch of door-to-door, done this in all my races, and you walk up to a door, and there's like 7 people in that house. I'm thinking, what the heck? And you know they're all not there. So we need to purge our voter registration. So again, going to work with the clerks that are Republican, that I do trust. I trust my clerk in Weld County. She's been an election official for over the course of the last 20 to 25 years, and the experience in that office is huge. I mean, it's like 75 years worth of experience in that elections office in Weld County. I'm going to pull her in because she understands the system, she understands how it works, and I'm going to ask her, I'm going to ask those Republican clerks who shouldn't be intimidated by me when I'm asking them, what can we do and how can we affect that? Because again, it goes back to, we've got to change some rules and regulations, and those go through the Secretary of State's office. And we've got to get some laws changed. And to do that, we've got to figure out how to, again, work with clerks in the state to get those things done.
Okay, let me just finish up here real quick. I think I'd like to see us go back to in-person voting and do away with the mail-in. I really would.
an easy one.
And it's got to be done by the will of the people. Barbara Kirkmeyer is right about that. But you know, governor can be pretty influential, lead a campaign, right? And maybe we can get him to vote it. I think we've had too many anomalies. And it's too suspect, the mail-in voting process. And I know it's convenient and it's well-liked. And I know our county clerks are doing their darndest to make sure it's legitimate and all. But, you know, I like a republic where you go, you stand up, you show your ID, and you vote for your candidate. That's what I want to do.
Okay, guys, sorry I can't get to everybody's questions unless you have 10 $100 bills to donate to the Mountain Republican Club right now. So what I'm going to do now is ask them to go down the line here and just give us a 30-second wrap-up from each one of you. Let's give you a full minute because we're so nice up here at the Evergreen Mountain Republican Club. And we'll start with you, John. We'll come right down this way.
He needs a microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said they're holding on to it. I'm so sorry.
Well, when's the clock start? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Again, you know, my impetus to get into this race was that I want to do things for the state. I am not that candidate that's going to be concerned with fixing things for the Republicans. I'm here to fix things for the state. That's where we need to approach this. We need to be able to look across the state and say, these are the issues that we face, and they don't get fixed by one party or the other. They get fixed collectively in a tripartisan manner. I use that word tripartisan deliberately. That's my Boulder background. We all grew up in that environment. We all got along. Who knew? Those are the things that we need to bring back to the state is diligence and working together on those different issues. But again, the governor owns the goalpost. We own the end result. If we're looking to reduce our energy, if we're looking to go nuclear, if we're looking to move our education to number one, if we're looking to improve our transportation, looking to revise revenue models, looking to do all of these different things and affordability, and bringing in investment, $18 trillion worth of investment that the Trump administration's gotten a hold of. Colorado's gotten zero of that. Those are the things that are Colorado issues. They're not Republican issues. They're not Democrat.
Thank you, John.